Writing personal narratives. When students are first taught to write stories, they learn that every story has a beginning, a middle part, and an ending. And they do. For example, in the beginning of the story of Cinderella, a messenger from the king's palace arrives at Cinderella's house with an invitation to a ball, which is a fancy dance party, at the castle. In the middle part of Cinderella, the main character's fairy godmother shows up to provide her with a fancy dress and transportation to the ball, which she was going to have to miss. The story ends with the prince falling in love with Cinderella and asking her to marry him. The story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But the writer of Cinderella actually includes much more depth and complexity to the story. There's backstory to be covered, there's foreshadowing and suspense and plot twist. A true story is so much more than just this happened, then this happened, then this happened. For instance, you think you're going to write a story about your trip to the amusement park. You tell about how it took 2 hours to get there, how you rode every ride in the park, then about how you went home. This sequence of events has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but it's not a story.
It's not?
No, not even close.
Why not?
Because there's much more to a story than just telling what happened. So what makes a story? A story is when you give a likable character a problem and see how they handle it. You don't just want to write a story, you actually want to be a good storyteller. That's your goal. Good storytelling is colorful, but above all, it is dramatic. And it is problems that create drama. If your teacher or parent in the past ever told you that they don't like drama, what they mean is that they don't like you creating problems for them, either by being mean or by overreacting to meanness. Face it, we all have problems in life, and it's interesting to see how other people handle their problems. If you don't have a problem, you don't have a story. That is why just writing about what you got for your birthday, or what all you did at the amusement park, or what all levels you defeated on your video game, it's not going to interest anybody else unless you are able to share some problem or problems that you had to overcome. And unless you share your frustration, your heartache, your sense of triumph in the process. Because what interests people is other people, not things. I know that you are very interested in getting to ride on the roller coaster, and you are very interested in your video game or what you got for your birthday, but if anybody else is going to be interested, then you as a writer are going to have to make the reader care about you, if you are the main character in your story. If you're writing a fictional story, then the readers are going to have to care about your main character, or protagonist, the good guy. The bad guy is called the antagonist. But there doesn't have to be a bad guy in your story to have a problem. Your problem can be an opponent, or a test, or a decision that you have to make, or a personal weakness to overcome. Anything in the way between you and your goal. The reason I said that a story is when you take a likable character and give them a problem to see how they handle it. It is important that your main character be someone that the reader likes, or somebody that they can connect to. Otherwise, the reader's not going to care what happens to them. If they don't care what happens to them, then they're not going to continue reading. So what makes a character likable? Readers like characters that they can relate to. Even if that character is an animal or an alien, they need to be real and vulnerable. What I mean by that is that they need to be someone with hopes and dreams and fears just like the reader. Even if the character is good or a confident person, they still have moments of self-doubt or temptation. We're all like each other in that regard. So, if you are the main character in your own story, do be open and honest about your inner thoughts and feelings. Don't assume that the reader knows what you're like already. For sure, don't act like you're perfect, unless you're fixing to learn that you aren't in the story. And don't be obvious about letting the reader know who you are. Hi, my name is Bobby, and I'm a likable person. Honk! Don't even go there. There's a basic dramatic story structure that's been around for about 2,700 years. The Greeks came up with it, and it's been used and tweaked ever since. It's a time-tested formula that almost every chapter book, every play, every movie that you ever enjoy has used. It was interpreted by German novelist and playwright Gustav Freytag in 1863 as a 5-part pyramid. Those 5 parts are exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and the French word denouement. I will simplify it even further for our elementary school purposes. Basically, Freytag's pyramid is a diagram or picture of the plot of a story, any story. It is the structural skeleton upon which you'll hang all the meaty details when you write that rough draft. The plot of a story is different than just the sequence of events. A story's sequence is a list of all the main events in the order that they happen. This is what many school children write about their experience, just a list of the main events in the order that they happen. We're going to progress beyond that. We're going to include Freytag's 5 story elements, each of which has a very specific purpose for including drama in your story. Carl, the happy wanderer, is going to help us demonstrate. Yeah, sure. Look at him. He's ready for a brisk hike. Maybe he'll break out into a yodel at some point. The first story element is exposition. With exposition, the writer decides how he or she is going to introduce their characters to the reader. The writer will also want to reveal the setting of the story insofar as the setting is important to the story. Sometimes when or where the story takes place is not so important, but other times it's very important. In short, the writer sets the scene for the reader, letting his or her audience know what's going on when the story starts. Sometimes it's important for the writer to include some backstory or history. For the exposition of Cinderella, the writer sets the scene by showing you what a drag Cinderella's current life is, slaving away for her cruel stepmother. But in order for the reader to appreciate her situation before the action really gets going, it's important in this case for the reader to know a little of Cinderella's history. That once she had a happy life with her natural mother or natural father, but things went sour for her when her mother died and her father remarried a mean woman with 2 mean daughters of her own. Things went from bad to worse when her father also died, leaving her subject to 3 mean women. Hi, Chihuahua. There it is. I knew it. You go, Carl. Before you're done with the exposition, you as the writer will want to introduce the problem or conflict in the story. A problem means an obstacle to overcome, large or small. Conflict means 2 forces in opposition. Conflict can come from without or from within. In Cinderella, the writer introduces the problem at the same time that he sets the scene. You might think that Cinderella's problem is that she can't go to the ball, but even after that is overcome, Cinderella's troubles are not over. Her troubles are only over when the prince marries her and takes her away from her terrible life, which is the real problem. The next story element is the rising action. Here, you develop the conflict, whatever is causing the problem for your characters and getting in the way of what they want. As a writer, you want to make life difficult for your characters. If the main character overcomes the problem quickly and easily, whether it's winning the big game or passing a test, then you don't have much of a story. You want things to get worse before they get better. You may want your character to try, fail. You may even let them think that they succeeded only to find out that they didn't. Psych! During this part of the story, you, the writer, are building suspense. That means that something is growing. Things might be getting more and more dangerous for your characters. The bad guys might be getting closer and closer. Time might be running out. The pressure might be building. Sorry. The reader should get the feeling that something's gotta give. And it does give in the next part of the story, the climax. In Cinderella, her fairy godmother shows up and makes it possible for her to go to the ball. But it is only a temporary fix. The reader knows, and Cinderella knows, that she'll be wearing rags again at midnight, which is drawing nearer and nearer and nearer. The climax of any story is when the main character is fed up and comes face to face with his or her problem. The attitude can be summed up this way. I can't take this anymore. You and me, we're going to have this out right now, buddy. One of us has got to go. In the kind of story called a tragedy, the problem actually wins, but in most cases, it's the good guy that comes out on top. Now, you as the writer haven't taken time and space to build up to the climax, which you will notice from the diagram is meant to be the peak of the action. You do not want to rush through this part of the story. You want to slow down. If you structured your story right, this is what the reader's been waiting for. It's the main event in your story sequence, and you want to write about it in descriptive detail. Even if you're not writing about a roller coaster ride, think of your story as a ride that you're taking the reader on. If what you are writing about is something that you personally experience, you want to think through and relate all the important sights and sounds, thoughts, and feelings associated with it. To merely sum up the experience by saying it was awesome or I was scared is to cheat the reader out of everything that you yourself went through. If you are making the story up, then you want to take the ride yourself in detail in your imagination so that your reader will have sights and sounds to experience. The climax of the story is the final and decisive battle of the war, you might say. And it's the point where things turn around for the main character or characters and they get the upper hand. That means that they get control of the situation or take the lead for good. In Cinderella, even though the prince falls for her, she winds up having to leave the ball in haste, leaving her slipper behind. Even when another messenger comes from the palace to find the owner of the shoe, Cinderella's stepsisters try to cut in front of her and claim her prize. The struggle is not over until their feet don't fit the slipper and Cinderella's does. Oh my goodness, what an ordeal. It is customary that your main character at least come out of the struggle having changed in some way. Maybe they're stronger, wiser, more cautious, or just have a new outlook on life. Something. Now, when you're really skilled as a writer, you can do more than just mention this at the end, but actually show the change as the story progresses. You can do this as you reveal the quality of your character's self-reflection, by what they say to others, or simply by changed actions. Like I said, what interests people is people. Now, once the situation is under control, the writer moves the reader through the falling action. The drama is over at this point. Any drama after the climax would take away from it or be, as we say in the theater, anticlimactic. But any loose ends in the plot need to be tied up. Any questions that might remain in the reader's mind should be answered. All this can, and in most cases should be done rather quickly. The only thing left is the resolution or denouement. Here, you wrap things up by telling how the story ends. By the way, just writing the end after you're all done is not the same thing. Stop doing that. It may be appropriate to give a glimpse of what the main character's future life is going to be like, as in, and they lived happily ever after. Don't use those exact words, by the way, unless you're writing a fairy tale. You may also want to give a glimpse of what the bad guy's future is going to be like, which is not good. I hope that this video has been a help to you in your writing life. The end. Not.